Good morning. Welcome to our Kitty Talks session on how to combat Amazon, how to create frictionless e-commerce. The words were not in that order on the invite, but those two themes remain throughout today's session. We are unfortunately a man down. David Kohn can't be with us this morning. Emergency in the Heels building. Nothing too serious, but he won't be on the call. But I'm nevertheless joined by Ruby Mellor, the wonderful Ruby Mellor, CRM and CX expert and global superstar, and of course Ian Scarr, who is sales director at and I have forgotten the name of Clayview. Sorry, sales director at Clayview, and absolute world-class superstar. We have a number of subjects to go through today. We're obviously short of a named brand. These two are going to introduce themselves in a little bit more detail and their expertise in a second. We're just going to cover off to start with the main topic and talk about some of the things that we think are the most interesting elements underneath the general question of frictionless e-commerce. What does frictionless e-commerce mean? How can you beat Amazon at it? Can you beat Amazon at it? What are the themes that we think sit underneath that brands and agencies as well should be aware of, and practitioners? So Ruby, do you want to get started under that general topic?
Yes, thanks, Gaz. Great introduction there as well. Thank you. So Ruby Mellor. So just a bit about my background. I come from 15 years in CX and CRM, working for lots of retail and e-commerce brands like the likes of Photobox, Office, Mr. Polster, and a few others. So it's a very interesting topic for me, this one. Frictionless e-commerce. We've obviously been discussing it for years. So in a nutshell, what it means is it's all about using data and insight about customer behavior and preferences to help design simple and seamless buying experiences. So we know that users are time poor and they don't want to have to think about their transactions. So the easier you can make that path to purchase for them, the better, really. So you can do this by being more relevant, personalized, engaging, and removing any points of friction in their experience, with the ultimate end goal for them to be able to obviously buy your product or service whenever or wherever they like, within as few clicks as possible. So we talk a little bit about Amazon, and I think it's safe to say over the last 18 months or so, we've become accustomed to having the availability of most products we want through Amazon at our fingertips, within a click, delivered to us directly by 10 p.m. that same day, which of course means that Amazon has become one of the e-commerce benchmarks for us, and what most people expect in terms of e-commerce functionality. Software as a service like BigCommerce and Shopify, they've all boomed thanks to their ability to be able to provide much of these features that users expect out of the box. However, non-Amazon brands are still managing to compete and win through their own well thought out optimized user journeys. So they're really looking to innovation to help create memorable experiences as a point of differentiation versus their competitors. So in terms of doing it well, I think when we talk about frictionless e-commerce, to start tackling this within your own business context, I think brands really need to start understanding where these points of friction are within their own journeys, and then look to new technologies and experience design to help make that customer experience better. And just a final point of the matter really is, as we're heading out of the global pandemic, we're probably going to notice consumer behavior and preferences changing once again. So the way that we shop, what we're buying. So I think now's a really good time for us to be able to pause and reflect and reassess where these opportunities may lie.
Wonderful, thank you, Ruby. And Ian, I'd obviously introduce yourself in a bit more detail as well, and yeah, cover off. I think you were talking about reducing friction, intelligent solutions, which is obviously what Clayview is.
Yeah, so Ian Scarr, head of sales at Clayview. I've been in tech for about 23 years. I think Amazon was just about around then, and they were selling books. That was about it, and there was a couple of other vendors that were doing that. I think Google was just forming as well. But about 18 years in e-commerce, so I've been around the block a little bit. There's not too many things I haven't encountered as we've gone through those cycles. So yeah, so as I've been around a bit, my kids say I was around in the black and white days, which is quite amusing. So Thanks, kids. But yeah, so Clayview's Discovery Suite. So it's a search category merchandising recommendations tool that uses user intent through search. And by using search, it allows you to understand what the users are doing straight away from the very first keystroke. And off the back of that, you can start to personalize it. And what that's doing is it's giving you a rich, engaging experience every time for each individual. So Ruby, Gareth, myself would all have a different experience on a site powered by Clayview, because it's understanding everything that you're doing, every interaction. And even when you come back to the site, it can sort of remember what you're doing. So if you start to type in the search overlay, you've got that experience coming back to you based upon what you've been browsing or buying particularly. So what do we see from that? Well, having relevant products, having that rich personalized experience, shoppers are more likely to buy, so 3 to 5 times more likely to purchase something if they've got something that's relevant to them. Imagine if you go into a store, so let's go back to the old retail days, when you're walking down the high street, you go into an electronics store, you ask for a TV, you get showed a toaster. It's just not relevant, is it? But they both begin with T. Yeah, so if you're doing a simple list index and you're doing a return, you've got everything that begins with a T, you know, that's the start of a poor search experience. You'd vote with your feet, you'd walk. What Amazon has done is they've given that accessibility to lots and lots and lots of products in a reasonable, and I'd say reasonable UX experience. So it's okay, but people are starting to be able to beat that because of technologies that you can bring forward. And what I mean by that is people like the breadth that Amazon give them, but they're starting to go with the brands because they want that personal user experience, that UX experience, because they're trusting the brands. The brands are stealing a march on Amazon. And are you beating Amazon? Yeah, you are, because what you're doing is you're giving people a better service, better products, more relevancy, the products they actually want when they go onto your site, and they're having a great experience. They're going to go and tell their mates, I've gone to X site and I found exactly what I was looking for within seconds. I've reduced that friction. I've reduced that click to purchase time. So that's really, really important. So yes, companies can beat Amazon. They have to be smart about how they go about beating Amazon. You're never going to be able to take them on toe to toe, just because of the breadth of what they're doing, and, you know, dare we say, marketplaces and all that sort of stuff. But if you as a brand want to be able to emulate and beat them from an experience perspective, to give your customers a really good path to purchase and frictionless path to purchase, then you would use the sort of personalization technologies that not only just Clayview provide, but other vendors out there as well. We did recently produce a report. It's our product discovery index report. It's available on our website. We can even send the links around to participants. And it found that 56% of all websites failed the product discovery test. So in other words, the product was there, but it didn't actually surface on the search results or the discovery experience results. So that's huge, you know. And if all those companies are failing, think about how much money they're losing.
Amazing. Yes. So on that note, we will send that round with a link. And if anyone does have any questions as we go through, please feel free to put them into the question box. We'll either try and work them in as we go through, or we'll address them at the end. And I'm just going to represent David as best I can for a second, which I'll get nowhere near. His 25 years of experience and incredible brand knowledge. But I know that David would be keen to stress that, yes, there are 2 sides to this. I know he has 4 points on brand, service, personalization, and product visualization. I will cover off a couple of them as best I can, which is that, yes, his view on it will be that you have to be a brand that somebody wants to go to in the first place. That's how you shortcut Amazon in the beginning. And then your challenge is, can you have as frictionless an experience as possible so that they continue to come back to you? Prime example, I still buy my beer direct from Brewdog, as I did at the start of lockdown, because it's very easy for me to do it on a mobile, and it's much cheaper than going to Sainsbury's. So Sainsbury's are losing quite a lot of beer purchases from my monthly shop, because Brewdog have done exactly that and shortcutted that in this particular consumer's experience. So we're going to move on from that frictionless e-commerce and the beginning of how to challenge Amazon into trust, and the role of AI in particular. Trust generally, you know, there are big antitrust issues with all of the largest brands in this space, Google, Facebook, Amazon to a degree, although probably they don't have quite as many challenges as maybe the larger data based providers. But there is a challenge around personalization sometimes, which is that it becomes a little bit too clunky, that there are in fact providers out there where maybe there isn't enough data to personalize everything. And as a result, it can be harder rather than easier to find what you're looking for. Ian, I know you had a few points on where it does and it doesn't work, so maybe we start there.
Yeah, and thank you for dropping in one of the Clayview customers at Brewdog. So it's a great, rich experience that we provided for them. So I'm glad you're having a great experience with that particular brand. Yeah, so we always find that personalization does work. And the reason I'm being quite bold in saying that is that we've seen that with all of our clients. As soon as we start to switch on the personalization engine that underpins our product discovery suite, we're starting to see average order values go up by about 15%, and it's driving around 40% more revenue from each shopper session by having that personalized experience, because it's understanding what you are doing and wanting and understanding that intent, so therefore surfacing the results. They're big numbers, but, and as David would have said at this point, you can't always trust the AI. And the AI doesn't always work. And absolutely, you have to work in conjunction with it. So the best solutions out there will always give you that ability to then be able to go in there and merchandise yourself, because you understand your business. Okay, yeah, you understand what your customers are buying, or how they're buying it, and when they're buying it, and you may have some data that you want to inject that's not necessarily collected by the solution that's actually on the front end of your website. So getting that blend right, by allowing the system to do, and we always say it's about 80% of the work for you, and then about 20% of the work is actually then done by the merchandisers that are sitting behind and being able to pull the strings. So that then allows you to then give you a better experience for those times when it, like you said, Gareth, gets a little bit clunky, and you want to just give it a little bit of a boost. So yeah, I think it's just making sure that you find that right blend for that particular brand, and each brand is different. Yeah, so AI has got to understand the brand, it's got to understand the users, therefore you need the merchandisers to be able to go on there and actually tweak it.
Wonderful. And Ruby, obviously there are a number of different ways you can approach this challenge. Are there particular standout options that are available to people?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to touch on that point really about trust. Actually, it's a really interesting topic of discussion that we discuss a lot sort of within the agency around how consumer behavior has changed over the last year and a half, is that people are more comfortable with shopping online now. So you know, even sort of my mother, who didn't know how to use a laptop at the start of lockdown, now is fully versed with it. And actually what we found is sort of pre-pandemic, there was this big kind of fear of GDPR and data, and people weren't really sure about, you know, privacy and security online. And people are a lot more relaxed about this now. There's a lot of sort of thought leadership on this that you can sort of find where people are more comfortable with this value data exchange. And the reason why I raise that point is because actually that data and being able to collect more granular data really does help with the AI side of things. So AI can work better when you are collecting more and more data. So I just wanted to talk about that point. In terms of solutions and options that are available, what I would say is whatever solutions you do opt for, as a business, we would always suggest that you start at the end in terms of your approach and work backwards. So think about your experience design and then review the technology and the data that you need to find to underpin this, and ultimately selecting the best options out of the best fit for your own business strategy. So there are some great solutions on the market that can help you tailor and personalize user experience. There's a whole broad range of things. We've talked about search and product personalization by Clayview. You can look to things like even AI in CRM. So Salesforce, for example, have B2C commerce proposition with lots of AI. Attribution modeling. We even have our own bespoke codes solutions that we code here within TP Group to help understand journeys holistically. There's a whole range of them. Really start with your experience design and how the problems that you need to solve. And then just a final point really on when it comes to deploying AI. So yes, I've had some previous experience at previous companies where sometimes it has worked and sometimes it hasn't. And my key takeaways, I suppose, would be when it comes to deploying AI is you have to test, learn and optimize. And the better you can plan out that testing, the better your results will be. So allow the AI to prove or disprove your theories. Start with a proof of concept if it's easier to win hearts and minds that way. have your, have some strong control cells in place. Make sure you're measuring the incremental impact of everything that you're doing so that you can tie it all back to the results further down the line. But I am a pro AI person. I think it can help if it's executed in the right way.
Wonderful. Yeah, you mentioned behavioural change at the start of that, partially due to the pandemic, partially just an acceleration of existing trends, I know. One of the things that gets brought up a lot, especially by retailers with physical presence, is cross-device measurement. The fact that you will be looking on your mobile phone when you're in store, you will be checking when you go home, how to maintain a user journey which is smooth and still includes the exact same products that you were looking at in store when you are at home is quite an important one, right? It's pretty much central to it, as Ian was saying. If you compare it to a shop, it's like taking a bit of it home and testing it, or going on a test drive. You can't test drive the wrong car. So Ruby, thoughts on the ideal principles within that of UX and specifically measurement?
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing for us to call out, actually, the buyer behavior. So sort of privacy and people being more comfortable with online shopping is one thing, but at the start of the pandemic, I think what's happened is a lot of brands have had to pivot very quickly and adapt to new ways of how customers are shopping. So the majority of brands that we've sort of seen have been pivoting their strategies without even having too much time to think about which experience design would work best and why. But what we have seen over this time very quickly is that device usage has shifted. So, of course, with the advent of work from home, it means that journeys could start by your tablet, possibly go via your smart TV, maybe even go via voice and Alexa, and then end up on your desktop. So I think the key takeaway there is, in order to be able to now look forward from a journey optimization perspective, I think one of the most important tactics that can be employed is to re-establish a refreshed view of your cross-device journeys and understand the points of friction within them. So start from scratch, have a look at your user journeys, look at your customer profiles, personas, plot the journeys, and try and understand and assess where your users are. And then you'll want to start testing and measuring, I suppose, against the basic principles of UX. So looking at the user's needs and are they being met? Let your users guide you on this. Looking at the consistency of your design and functionality. The hierarchy, is your website or your app flowing naturally? Context, which devices are users moving between? Accessibility, have you optimized for accessibility? It's very important. And then really start quantifying all of this. So on the quantitative side, looking at things like NPS, customer satisfaction scores, web analytics, heat mapping. On the qualitative side, if you have any gaps in your data, look at customer feedback, social listening, app reviews, any other types of reviews your brand and products and services offer. And then, of course, just picking the right tools to help you with that. So in addition to your Google Analytics, looking at things like Hotjar, user testing, Delighted, all of these tools can help you. And then just a final thought on it really is, we do suggest always taking an always-on approach to A/B testing. So constant site optimization, because this is the only way you can really avoid falling behind your competitors. So it's not a once you've done that's it. You always have to keep an eye on it. So a couple of ways you can do this. You can look at conversion rate optimization. So A/B testing small incremental changes, which might, copy around your call to actions or positioning of things, which might help the overall picture. You might want to engage in some standalone UX UI projects like design sprints to tackle specific challenges. Or you can go even bigger picture than that and run some standalone app and website audits. But I think the really important thing here is to be able to measure, assess, understand, and really plan ahead before jumping straight into redesigning your e-commerce experience, because you're ultimately then taking all of the guesswork out of the process and ensuring that your results will be more impactful.
Wonderful. I think, Ian, you've got some stats and some examples of where this can really have an impact. Because I think that's a wonderful introduction. I think if people are taking notes, please do. But this is the important bit to take the notes on, because I think this will give you a proper steer and some info on what to focus on first, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think Ruby talked about customer experience and working back from that customer experience, identifying the friction points and where we need to sort of fix those. Really great example that Clayview have got with regards to, from a case study perspective, is we work with a luxury brand called Totem. And for them, it's about user experience. It's about the brand experience. It's about maintaining their look and feel and the quality of that. And I think that's hugely important for all luxury brands. And Heels are probably in that category as well because of the nature of their business. So what we were able to do with Totem is actually, they didn't have to adapt to Clayview. Clayview adapted to them. And we went down a full sort of headless approach with them. So we sort of decoupled the traditional ways of doing, you know, logging, plug and play with a cartridge. And we basically gave them the full back-end APIs. And I said, right, you tell us what you want to retrieve from the data, and then you can represent it how you want to on the front end, you know, because that's going to allow you to control the user experience. And that flexibility allowed them to keep the ownership of the brand. It wasn't Clayview dictating through templates or anything like that. It was them designing how the front end worked. And then through simple single API calls, retrieving the data, they could make sure that that brand experience was consistent across all devices and all channels, because it allowed not only the homepage to be consistent with the search results, the landing pages, category pages, mobile, desktop, tablet, across the board was returning exactly the same results, and it had the same look and feel as well, just reduced in size or expanded depending on what channel they were looking at things. And the results were really, really good from that. And we're sort of putting a case study together, and we've got that to be published very, very soon. With regards to the results side, we've got the case study of how we built it, and that's available. But it's hugely important that you get that brand consistency and the returning of that relevant results. Other case studies we've got, so Soak and Sleep is one of our customers, and they had, by adopting the Clayview and the product discovery approach and making sure that experience was consistent, they had 120% increase in search-led revenue by applying that consistency, 27% decrease in bounce rate. So that's huge, because you think every one of those people that is not now bouncing, they're potentially turning into a customer. Yeah, because previously they would come on and got the toaster rather than the TV. Yeah, in that sort of example. So that actually did lead to a 50% increase in search-led transactions. So, you know, you can see how flipping that reduction in bounce rate actually will increase the search-led transactions. LSE Retail, they had a 15% increase in conversion rates, and they had a 30 times ROI from implementing Clayview over a course of about a month, I think it was. So it literally was that quick that you can pay for these types of solutions. They really will give you massive benefits very, very quickly. If you deploy it in the right way and you go at it and you use your SIs, you use the internal people that you've got that understand your brands, and connect it to the right solutions. You know, you talked about different elements there. Everything from your PIM to your e-commerce platform, your COS to your CRM are all implicated in something along the ways when you're trying to put a product discovery suite in the top end, because the data is massively important in this whole process.
Brilliant. We've had a question come in, which I think Ian has actually at least 80% answered in there. The question is, what can a small brand do to add value to customer experience through their website? So answer number one, use Clayview and speak to Ian.
Use search. I think just have an enhanced search. You know, the other search vendors are available, but obviously use Clayview.
I think just addressing that also a little bit wider. I mean, there are lots of answers to that question. How, you know, be creative, you know, with your website as well. I think, I don't know how many people still look at Scarr as an example of how extreme you can go in making an interesting experience. But Scarr would class as a small brand. And I think, you know, equally that can involve expanding outside of your website and looking at what other elements you can address as a small brand. Where are your audience? We haven't, this must be the only web chat that I've been on that hasn't mentioned Gen Z. So I'm going to break that straight away and talk about Gen Z a little bit, and the types of things that they're doing. So things like social shopping is obviously massively increasing at the moment. Even my wife spent a lot of lockdown on Facebook Live with her favorite shop in the middle of town, getting product demos live, and she bought 3 or 4 items doing that, and that's only increasing in usage. So the next section, the final section, we're just going to talk a little bit about future gazing, and obviously sometimes that can be seen as you know, big budget and expensive, but I think actually in this case it's more about understanding, you know, what are the channels that people are using generally. How do you capture eyeballs? How do you capture heart and mind, not just of Gen Z, but of anybody that's using all of the things that are available to them across the web and across digital. We're talking a little bit about AR and VR. I know that Heels in particular is a premium luxury provider of furniture. One of the key things that they talk about isn't just the brand itself, but also the product and the quality of the product, which, yes, you can see by going in store, and you can see lots of mock-ups of, you know, a vision of what your living room or your library could look like were you to fill it with all of Heels furniture and wonderful accessories. But actually that touches a little bit also on augmented reality and virtual reality. Augmented reality tending towards mobiles and an overlay on the things around you. Virtual reality, you know, it's increasingly now is online communities, is Roblox, is Minecraft, and brands are starting to lean into that and really go to town on showing people in the virtual space what the product is, what the product experience is, show a little bit of customer service and messaging around that. I think, Ian, you had some thoughts specifically on what sort of elements search can have to help navigate that, because actually with virtual reality comes endless possibilities, endless products, endless levels of personalization. So yeah, how do you navigate that?
You talked about Gen Z, we talked about Alexa, we've talked about voice, things like image search are coming down the line in the future. I think all of these things are going to be involved in that sort of virtual experience, I suppose, of being able to showroom, being able to look exactly on your mobile device. You've got it, you're looking around and going, right, that sofa, here's my room, let's plot it on there, that sort of thing. But how do you get that product there in the first place? You know, it all comes back to the product discovery. It comes back to search, doesn't it? Being able to find it. Is it relevant? Can I find it within a couple of clicks, a couple of words, and being able to surface those results into whatever you are looking to actually visualize it on. So whether that be a website, whether it be a tablet, whether it be a mobile device in store. You know, everyone can remember the Minority Report, can't they, years ago, where you had all these things popping up based upon who you were and where you were. You know, that sort of thing is eminently possible in the future, that, you know, we're all carrying around something that's emitting, you know, our profile with our mobile devices. So there's no reason why in the future. It's been tried in the past and people haven't quite got there yet, but I think it's not too far away. But how are they going to find that information? When they're going to search for it, aren't they? They're going to use an element of that. And I think that's really, really important. But we know consumers always know what they want when they're going in, they're going shopping. So they generally will go in with that intent. And I think that's really important. You can get distracted by offers, whiz-bang promotions, you know, flashy advertising, isn't this cool? But whether it's via typing, whether it's by voice, whether it's by image, whether it's by some cognitive thing that we're going to plug into our brains in the future, we're going to find that and want to find exactly what we're looking for. And I think that's really, really important. But also linking back to what Ruby was talking about, we've got to have really good customer experience, great design, immersive and beautiful designs are what people are going to want in the future, because they're going to want to visualize these things in whatever environment they're buying for. And if you don't get those things all right, well, let's go back to that TV and toaster example. You're going to walk. You know, people want that relevancy. They want that great product discovery. They want that great experience. They want that great brand experience. Otherwise, they're going to vote with their feet.
Lovely. And Ruby, obviously, I'm living in my virtual world right now. I've got any level of sneaker customization available to me, which makes me very happy. What does it mean for brands, though, on the other side of that, trying to make sure that I'm having a customer experience which isn't just so overwhelming and so personalized that actually I end up looking like a bit of a prat?
Yeah, I think that there will be an element. So we're going to see sort of this more human element to digital CX, and I feel like to prevent you looking like a prat, I think what we're seeing a lot of, especially in the luxury sector, sort of really paved the way over the pandemic with this approach, is bringing the physical world to the digital world. So having these rich experiences where you can browse in store from the comfort of your home. So we're going to see a lot more of that. I think that customers will want to interact with brands more over time as well, much like yourself, Gaz, and they'll probably be expecting even more convenience, ease and speed, and with a human touch still integral. So I think the technology that's going to help us will ultimately lead in terms of innovation to support these hybrid online, offline journeys and shopping experiences. I think we're going to start seeing the ability to browse and interact with a website via voice a lot more. I know that I've got a few different robots at home and I've been using them all. So I think there's going to be some interesting sort of advancement there. More incorporation of AR. I think some brands are already doing this really well to an extent, but we'll see even more of it. And then the other thing which might help shoppers like yourself, Gaz, is there's a big trend moving towards conversational commerce. So I think this is likely to be on the rise. So customers want to feel like they're receiving this concierge level of service, and we'll notice that the sales and customer service agents are really going to rely heavily on automation and insight to help them deliver this. So it will be a hybrid of you shopping online and still having that sort of one-to-one experience. But yes, overall it should be quite an exciting year for e-commerce and UX.
Wonderful. And of course, a big bounce back expected.
Yes.
We've had another question again. I think you've touched on some of this. How important is it to get my website optimized for voice? I mean, the simple answer is pretty important. Certainly a large number of searches are carried out via voice, obviously a lot of those on Google, but nevertheless, the ability to allow somebody to search your website while they are perhaps doing something else. And of course, just for accessibility for anybody not able to use a mouse to navigate the screen, type in, etc. So yes, it is hugely important. Is it a way to get an edge on Amazon? Was the second part of that question. Not necessarily. I think Amazon already has elements of that. So I think we'll run into the summary at this point, because obviously we've taken up quite a lot of time already. So to summarize, I think, how do you beat Amazon? How do you beat them? How do you create frictionless e-commerce? I mean, one thing to say is to perhaps be inspired by Amazon rather than necessarily to try and compete with them head on. And an important part of that is building your brand and also highlighting your products and highlighting the value of them, because whether people are already on Amazon and expecting a certain level of frictionless e-commerce and delivery and excellence in that area, or whether they're coming direct to your website and expecting their beer on time every single month. The fact is that you have to have a product that people want in the first place, and to achieve that fame is worth the effort. So that's one way of competing with Amazon, if you want to call it that. But of course, the second part is to have a frictionless experience, is to make sure that when they are attracted to the product, if they're not on Amazon and expecting that user journey there, is to make sure that they can have that that smooth experience on your website. Use Clayview was my other point on that one. Make sure you use Clayview and create frictionless journeys. So yeah, those are the three main points. Don't necessarily compete head on with Amazon, be inspired by them, create frictionless journeys. As usual, I've had a lot of other questions that, including how can I get myself on a rocket to space? Create a frictionless website 20 years ago that sells all sorts of products, and you can probably get yourself on a rocket to space and be inspired.
Or set up a music or a record store back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. Time travel, that's the answer. It's wonderful. So I think we'll leave it there on that wonderful question and thoughts of rockets to space. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. Thank you, Ian, so much. Thank you, Ruby. We'll see you soon.